Welcome to our epic ocean, where critical solutions to a planet in peril are brought to the surface. Our epic ocean celebrates all that is epic about the ocean and why it is the planet's most vital resource. And now to our host, Rich Gurman.
Hey, this is Rich, and welcome to Our Epic Ocean, where we focus on critical solutions to a planet in peril. I am super pumped today to get to speak with the one and only George Orbelian. George is a lifetime ocean lover, the former surfboard design editor for Surfer Magazine, co-founder of Project Kaisei, which received the Google Earth Hero recognition for its 2009 expedition to the North Pacific Gyre with Scripps Institution of Oceanography. George has been deep into regenerative solutions and has so much to share. So we are going to dive right in. George, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Thanks, Rich. Great to be here. Look forward to co-creating with you and seeing what we can do together.
I love it, man. So excited to talk to you. Oh, gosh, so many things I wanted to discuss and dive deep with you. But I think I want to start with just kind of the world that we're living in today. Obviously, these are interesting and challenging times. And I would just love to kind of open this with hearing your take on the world. You know, you've been at this for decades, trying to make a difference in the world. And it's an interesting world that we're in. So if we could just start with your take on what's going on in the world today. I know that's a pretty broad beginning.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, I feel blessed. I've gotten to meet so many incredible people and had a chance to really engage with nature. So my parents came to this country after World War II. They met in an internment camp in Germany, came through Ellis Island.
Wow.
My mom was trained as a doctor in the Ukraine and in former Soviet Union. And my dad came to San Francisco and got a job as a janitor at Gump's, and Richard Gump met him in the basement of this famous store and asked my dad if he had been in World War II, and my dad said yes, and he said, well, come to my house. I want to know what it was really like. And then they got to be friends. Richard Gump became my godfather. So at my christening, I had hula dancers. So I guess I was destined to connect to Hawaii and the ocean.
Nice.
Then at 11 years old, I went to Tahiti, and I went to Richard's home on the island of Moorea. And I dove with a mask and saw incredible, beautiful corals and met the islanders and connected to the islands in a unique way, and was given a conch shell that you blow by Carrie, the caretaker at my godfather's place. And always loved the ocean. Our first house had a view of the ocean, and my sister took me down to the beach a few times, and I was just amazed by the ocean and its power, and then the gorgeous sunsets. And I just, loved nature and was connected to it. And then when I was in high school, I got into motorcycle racing and building engines. And there was a guy that surfed, and he wanted to learn how to ride, and I wanted to learn how to surf. So I got into surfing, and I took my knowledge of mechanics and connected it to surfboard design, wrote a book on surfboard design that got me connected to Surfer Magazine. And then I met incredible, legends of the sport and had them tell me what the ocean used to be like, and that they used to live off of it and go into it to heal their cuts. And I just said, wow, it's not like that anymore. And for an ecosystem that big and complex to be changing, where we can recognize the changes in our lifetime, things have to be very, very wrong. We have to be doing things that are going to kill us. And so I decided to get involved with trying to understand what I could do. And so I looked at what was being done. What are the best people in the world doing to protect our natural resources? And dove into the work of Sylvia Earle and Jacques Cousteau and, Scripps Institution of Oceanography and Walter Munk and Woods Hole and NOAA. And oh boy, there was so much information, so much knowledge, so much passion. And yet it wasn't being integrated into our policies, into our businesses. What was standing in the way? What was happening? And one of the things is nature doesn't have a voice. It's up to us to listen and to care. And so I thought of, what could I do? How could I unify all the people that love the ocean and bring them together?
Yes.
I had the idea for, how does that happen in the world normally? So I took as an example countries, and they have boundaries, they have nationalism, they have patriotism, they have national anthems, they have flags. And then I thought to myself, hey, got all these flags hanging at the United Nations, 194 flags. How come the ocean doesn't have a flag?
71%. Yeah.
71% of the planet doesn't have a flag. 29% has 194 flags. I'm going, how does that make any sense? We got to correct that right away.
Nice.
So I talked to some friends, and they introduced me to a guy named Doug Woodring, who is based in Hong Kong. And Doug's originally born in the Bay Area in Tiburon, and so he would come back and forth between Hong Kong and the Bay Area to visit his folks and brother. And so he came over, he met, and then we met with Mary Crowley, who owns the Kaisei. She's part of Ocean Voyages Institute. And Ocean Voyage is the company that does charters around the world, and lifelong sailor. Doug's a paddler and open water swimmer, and great guy. And so we started looking at what could we do with the ocean flag. And then I said, well, we need to have something behind the flag, because hanging a flag without any action isn't enough. So then we were really focused on the work of Captain Charles Moore and his discovery of the plastic in the North Pacific Gyre.
Yes.
So we decided to, let's go after the plastic, because everyone was saying it's impossible to clean up. I'm a big fan of John F. Kennedy, and how if you focus your thoughts on what you want to see happen, you can do incredible things, and that's what's required at this time. So we put together Scripps Institution of Oceanography with the Kaisei expedition, and went out in 2009 and drug mantonets and did research on that, and realized just how bad the problem was, that we were finding confetti-sized pieces of plastic all through the water column.
Wow.
And everywhere we looked, in fact, both the Kaisei, which is a 151-foot brigantine tall ship, and the New Horizon, which is the 174-foot research vessel coming out of San Diego Harbor. Kaisei came out of San Francisco Bay. We drug nets all the way to and from the expedition rendezvous point, and we never got a net out of the water that didn't have plastic in it.
And how far are we talking from the California coast? You're talking.
Well, we were going 1,500 miles northeast of Hawaii,
and it was just
where we were, plastic everywhere.
What was that like to experience? It's what we all hear about the garbage patches out there, but to actually be in the water and experience it, what was that like?
I actually wasn't there. I was coordinating everything on land. I was on the computer for like 20 to 22 hours a day.
Wow.
Coordinating all the different elements, because we had to have our geocoded videos and photos being shared on social networking live and allowing people to connect. But Doug Woodring was on the New Horizon. Mary Crowley was on the Kaisei. And one of the most striking stories to me was a researcher from Scripps. A young woman collapsed on the deck in tears when she saw, how bad it was. Because it was, you look at the surface of the water, it looked okay. But then when you looked close, you just saw the speckles everywhere. And, they found a ghost net out there, big one. It was bigger than the Kaisei. They cut pieces up of it, cut it up into pieces and brought parts of it home. And then Mary's out there right now harvesting ghost nets because that's just low-hanging fruit.
So you're talking 2009.
Yeah.
We're 11 years later. How much better or worse would you say this problem has gotten?
Oh, it's really hard to say because there's no one really paying attention to the exact locations and monitoring how those locations are changing. And also it's fluid, it's all changing. You got seasonal current changes that influence how much plastic is accumulating where. We have Chris Jordan's work with Manuel Maqueda, the work they did on Midway Island. Have you seen that?
No, tell us about that.
Yeah, so they went out there. Then Chris Jordan's famous photograph of the Lausanne albatross chicks with their carcasses rotting with the plastic inside. So that's another one. Beaches are incredibly efficient cleanup for the ocean. The waves bring the plastic up, it settles, and the tides and waves recede. So, continuous beach cleanup is a great way, but there's also part of this plastic that settles and part of it breaks away and, takes off on the gyres, on the large currents in the ocean. And then the other thing that happens is we have solar degradation. So plastic doesn't biodegrade as well as it photodegrades.
Yeah.
So the sunlight causes it to get brittle, and then the wave and wind action breaks it up until it just doesn't get any smaller. But we found chairs, bottles, all kinds of stuff out there.
Amazing. Tell me how the voyage led to the Google Award, if you could.
Well, we were really interested in using social networking technology to spread the word about ecological disasters on the planet. And so TJ Marbois and Kendall Nishimini, who are my partners at Ojingo Labs, TJ had worked with Apple. Kendall had worked with George Lucas at ILM. And so we decided we would be using the new iPhones to take photos and videos out at sea and then geocode those using Google Earth so we could spotlight every place a video or photo was taken. So we did that, and there's a couple-minute video on YouTube that you can see about the expedition that you can share with the listeners that gives an overview of what we did.
Beautiful. So let's stick with plastic for a little while. I want to go back to the flag. You mentioned the idea of a flag, and I want to get the status of that. But yeah, plastic, I in my mind, I look at it partly like, okay, first we need to cut off the flood of plastics going into the ocean and simultaneously deal with the plastic that's already in the ocean. What can we do on both fronts?
So, look at the environment as your body, and look at pollution as poison,
Okay.
or an overabundance of something that your system just can't handle. So you're absolutely right. We have to stop the flow of plastic into the environment. So the plastic creating companies could do the world a great service by providing us with the best recycling technologies available. I mean, they put this stuff together. They know chemically how to take it apart. They should join into this fight. And instead of us staying in this confrontational position, we're all in this together. We're not going to get out of this unless we all help.
In your
And
experience, did they? I'll finish and I'll remember what I was going to ask.
yeah, no, that so I've talked with the plastics company. They got engaged, and they were interested in what we were going to do. And I said, what we're going to do is we want to fix this problem. You want to help us. And that's when it went quiet.
That's when what?
That's when it went quiet.
Quiet. Well, that was kind of what I was going to ask. Do they care? Do they care about anything besides the bottom line? Is that what it boils down to?
I want to hope that they care, but I also look at their actions.
Right. I guess what I'm wondering is it someone coming to them with a solution for, let's say, a marine biodegradable bioplastic? I don't really like the word bioplastic because a bioplastic is not actually a plastic, but for this conversation, we'll call it that. If someone came to one of these companies that is just using so much of this plastic and said, hey, look, here's a better alternative that will not only make you look like a hero of the environment, but it will also save you money. Is that the answer we need? And or is it us as consumers just getting to the point where we just say, we're not going to use your product anymore. We don't want it. Like, what's going to cause them to actually change?
The consumers. They won't do it because they're entrenched in their thinking and their supply chains. And so they've had every opportunity. They've, turned the science into doubt science. They've ignored us. They don't care. I think a lot of people making decisions about the ocean, do they even have a bathing suit? What's the deal here? Who gave you the right to influence what happens to something that affects the future of life on this planet? Who gave them the right? So we have to stand up. We have to say, hey, we're not going to allow this to continue.
What do you think that actually looks like, though, in reality? Like, is it I read a stat once that if 17% of people demanded a change, let's say 17% of people said to Saran wrap, not to call them out, but we don't want to use your plastic wrap, come up with something else or we're not going to buy it, that they would basically be forced to change. Is it like, that's what I'm wondering, like what actually and I like that you're saying it's a consumer driven change that needs to occur, because that hopefully will empower us as individuals, like, hey, we can make a difference here. But what would that actually look like in your mind?
This is all about empowerment. This is a shift in consciousness. It's empowering every individual on this planet. The destruction to the environment and racism are the same thing. It's not listening to and respecting life. As long as you do that on any level, you're unconscious.
I love that you're saying that, because when I step back and look at the world today, and I'm like, okay, so first we're dealing with this global health crisis, which to me completely ties into this global environmental crisis. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves in this whole race issue. And it's like, this is not just a coincidence. It is, I love what you're saying, but it is all about consciousness. I've always felt like somehow we need to elevate the collective consciousness of the planet so that we naturally begin to make better decisions that will make a positive impact on the planet, on ourselves as individuals, and not just based on profit. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, this is where it gets really fun.
How so?
This is the most exciting time to be alive that I can imagine. I ride motorcycles on road race courses. I don't ride on the street because there's too many variables, but I ride on road race courses, and I ride up to speeds of 150 miles an hour, and I go through turns, and I
You
love it.
seem like way too mellow of a man to go 150 miles an hour in anything.
No, it's I've been riding since I was 11 years old, so I love riding, but it's critical now. Now it matters. It's like surfing. It's like surfing big surf. When you paddle out on a big day, every whenever you go in the ocean, everything you do has consequence. Everything in life has consequence. But people they don't get hammered by nature. It humbles you.
That's right.
When you go in and you're dealing with physics, and you understand the repercussions of every sequential decision you make. And then if something goes wrong and you have a close call, then you kind of track back and you go, well, how did I get there? And so right now it's an incredible time to be alive. We know more about the planet than we've ever known. We can't go back and start looking and expecting us to find out, some secret knowledge from the past. They didn't know what we know now. They know stuff that they knew, but we're shaped by and we're changed by everything we learn. That's how our neurosystems work. Our neurosystems are constantly branching out and trying to understand what's out there. That's how mycelium networks work. That's how fungi and bacteria, everything is like that. And we're part of nature. And so when we see things going on, we're influenced by it. And as Bucky said, if we're in integrity, then our role as omnipotential problem solvers can save this relationship. And as Amanda Joy Ravenhill, who's part of the Buckminster Fuller Institute with me, says, then humans can become peak or apex collaborators with nature, which is our destiny. To see where humans and nature can coexist at such a level in such a complementary way that we flourish to a whole new level of existence. And as Bucky said, then technology and knowledge will allow us to do more with less until we're doing everything with nothing.
Whoa, say that again.
Technology will allow us to do more with less until we're doing everything with nothing.
Brilliant. So I want to talk more about Buckminster Fuller. I want to circle back to what you started talking about, motorcycles. But first, the question that comes to mind, is this possible with 9 billion of us all crawling over this planet? Can we coincide with nature and not destroy it and have it then destroy us?
It's happening right now. We're watching it. We're living it. This little COVID thing happened, and look what it shut the whole world down, changed our direction, stopped travel, stopped people going to work. So that question's answered. We can change. We can change in a matter of weeks, days. We can change at the speed of thought. We just have to decide where we want to be. The environmental movement's been stuck in a state of perpetual preparation. It's time to act.
So let's talk action. Actually, I'm going to circle back. We're going to come back to action, but you brought up going 150 miles on a motorcycle a few minutes ago, and I just I had a question on that, but first, what's the correlation between that and what's going on in the world right now?
The faster you go, the further ahead you have to look. And the faster you go, the earlier you prepare your body on the bike for the next turn you're going to be dealing with. And then the gentler and the slower you apply your controls. So it becomes this dance with speed that's very gentle and precise.
So you're at
And
150 miles an hour, but everything is going slow.
yeah, there was a guy talking about racing at the Isle of Man, and it's a road race course on a 37-mile closed loop at the Isle of Man. And he was saying at the beginning of the racing season, everything's a blur when he goes by, but by the time he gets a few races under his belt, he can pick out what kind of necktie somebody's wearing when he goes by him at 200 miles an hour. So your brain can speed up. We're used to working at a particular speed. We don't push ourselves. So this situation is speeding up our brains and empowering us to absorb more information and then react. And we have to stop thinking about what we can't do, because that's not true. What we can do is what needs to be done for survival. Anything else is a shortcut.
I love that. Yeah, I love that we're talking about empowerment. You seem to be someone who is far from lost hope in humankind, which is very important right now. Speaking of hope, are you hoping for an electric motorcycle?
Oh, they're around.
Do you have one?
They have. I don't have one yet, but they are around. And there's even MotoGP has a electric motorcycle race team that they work with. I haven't ridden a high performance one yet, but yeah, eventually everything will be electric. All the cars, all the motorcycles. There's no reason for us to stick with the internal combustion engine, though I love the way they sound.
They
I
do
like
sound
the
good.
way they deliver power, but I'm ready to give that up.
Yeah, what would it be like on a 150-mile-an-hour motorcycle that's basically silent?
It's weird. I've talked to the guys that ride them and race them, and it's quieter. The power delivery is different. They're heavier, but they do things that you can calibrate the way you want the power, so you don't have a gearbox. So you can, in an internal combustion engine, you're changing gear ratios and you're shifting and you're keeping the bike on the power band, but the torque delivery on an electric motor is right there from 1 RPM. So you don't need to rev the engine up in order to get it into its power.
I love it. So you mentioned Buckminster Fuller a couple times. Can you share a little bit more about your experience? I believe you sit on the board of directors for the Institute. Tell me more about that.
If there was one man that has given more to this planet than any other man, it would be Bucky.
Wow.
Yeah. His quote, "Make the world work for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time through spontaneous cooperation without ecological offense or the disadvantage of anyone." I mean, that says it all. That's what my life is these days. And he gave us these ideas like comprehensive anticipatory design. So when you think about comprehensive anticipatory design, you have to understand the entire comprehensive system. Then you have to understand it well enough to anticipate how it would change if you designed an influence for it. And so that's a really incredible thought, because one of the things I learned about in building racing bikes and riding is that you have to understand what happens when you make this change. We used to always change one thing, both on a surfboard or on a bike. You change one thing and you go out and try it. And that's what's difficult about human health, is that how much oxygen's in your system because of the way you breathe, how hydrated you are, what kind of foods you eat, what kind of exercise you have, what kind of outlook you have, what kind of community you have. All of that is an influence in your health and happiness. That's why so many of us, our friend Wallace J. Nichols, Blue Mind author,
Mm-hmm.
we get rejuvenated by connecting to the ocean or water. It's essential to us. And, if we want to empower humans, we have to understand these systems, and we have to actually engage with nature, feel like we're a part of it, and understand our role as a collaborator and co-creator in the future.
How do we do that? Like, you and I are blessed. I live right on the beach in Laguna Beach. I get to go paddleboard every single day with wild dolphins and whales. Right before I got on this interview with you, I was swimming in the ocean. Like, I'm lucky. I mean, I created this lifestyle, I guess, but we're fortunate, right? Not everyone's like that. So how do we get people? I guess it's like, how do we? I love that you're saying it's this. At the end of the day, we have the power. That's a very empowering thought. How do we empower more people? How do we get people to care enough to lead to the change that you're talking about?
I think
Where,
part of it is letting them know that this is an option, that the ocean's an option, that water's an option, that nature's an option. And we tend to get distracted with all the different things going on around us. And look at the way the media uses us. You know, Bucky had this great story when he was growing up. He was born in 1895, and then the radio came into his life, and so the whole family would gather around the radio and listen to the radio. And then pretty soon he started to realize that, hey, my parents are telling me what the radio told them. So he goes, well, why do I need to listen to my parents? I'll just listen to the radio directly. And that's how media is,
yeah,
taken such an influence in our lives. And then before we had these trusted newscasters we would listen to, and Walter Cronkite and stuff, and you'd listen to what they said, and then all of a sudden 60 Minutes came along, and it was in prime time on a Sunday evening. And then the networks realized that, hey, we can do something with this news, because we got to keep up with 60 Minutes. They're taking away our entertainment ratings. And so that's when news shifted into this idea of being another media attractor. And so that's really critical, is where do you get the information that you trust to live your life?
Critical question. I've been saying that for a few months now. Like, it's hard to know, like with the pandemic, it's hard to know what to believe. Like,
exactly.
it really is.
Yeah. And that's where, again, going back to nature and understanding that the ecosystem health, the ecosystem immune system is our immune system. So, they found that some of the higher cases of COVID were in polluted environments,
Right.
where the COVID particle would hitch a ride on a particulate of the pollution and get into people's lungs that way. Well, if they're in polluted environments, then their lungs are challenged anyway. So, how does this whole system of health influence where we're at? And then we've all heard of the placebo effect.
Mm-hmm.
What if you've got the media blasting at you at how dangerous you're going to die? What's that do if you start to feel your throat scratching, or you sneeze or whatever? If you don't know your body well enough, and you're not used to having that relationship with yourself, then it's gonna take its toll. And we're seeing it, we're watching it. It's sad. It's sad. It's tragic that these people are being sacrificed to this experiment gone wrong, that we haven't realized what nature means to us, and what health really is.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is, if the ocean's sick, we're sick. If the
Yeah,
planet's not well, we can't be well.
right.
Let's go back to Buckminster. You obviously adore this human being. How did you even get introduced to him, and how did you eventually wind up on the board of directors?
So I also was influenced by a guy named Richard Gump, who I mentioned earlier, the owner of
That's right.
Gump's, because every time I had a conversation with him, he would connect things that, you'd start out talking about the wood on the dashboard of his Jaguar, and it would turn into the kind of forests that grew in this one section of Europe that were then used as gun stocks in this particular revolution. And he turned me on to the history of boat building and mariners. And so when I met Bucky, or learned about Bucky, I never got to meet him. I met his daughter, Allegra, and I met his grandson, Jamie, and I met Alexandra, his granddaughter, once. And so, he was just so right on. Everything I read and the information that he shared. Here's an example. He's at a conference, and somebody says, they're going to be building a nuclear power plant near my home. And Bucky, I'd like to know, how safe is a newer nuclear power plant that's nearby me? And he said, nature and universe figured this out a long time ago, and the closest it put living protoplasm to nuclear energy was 93 million miles away. So he answers the question.
That's good.
It gives you a little science lesson all at the same time. And then, once he was on a hilltop with some students, and they were looking at the night sky, and one of the students said, "Oh, look at all the stars up there." And he said, "There is no up. There's only in or out in relation to center." And then another time he was with some students, and one of them said, "Oh, the wind's really blowing hard." And he said, "There's no physical force on this planet that could make wind blow. Wind sucks." And to add to it, he goes, "You can't push a rope through a house. You have to pull it through a house." So it gives you an idea of how these systems work, right? The low pressure sucks the wind from the high pressure into an area. And he would even talk about people saying sunrise and sunset. You go, why are you saying that?
Yeah.
He talked to teachers and scientists and stuff. He goes, why are you saying that? He goes, how do you expect to get the correct results if you keep describing the problem inaccurately? The sun doesn't rise and set. He goes, take a globe, take a little cutout of a human being, tape it to the globe, get a torch, that's what he called this, the flashlight, get a torch, shine it on the globe, spin the globe, and all the kids in the classroom will have no problem understanding that, what's happening with the way the light's coming in and out of their lives. And then he had the world game. Do you know about the world game?
No, tell me.
So he created the Dymaxion map, which he made big enough to fold out over a basketball court at a high school or college. And it was the most accurate land-sea representation in history. He was a naval officer, so he knew the world and he knew the oceans. And the students would stand on the globe, or not on the globe, excuse me, on the Dymaxion map, and they would have in their hands the resources of that particular area. And they stood in the concentrations that represented the population centers, and then they traded those resources. And he wanted to show how the world could work differently if we didn't have nations and boundaries, because he felt politics and boundaries were the blood clots on the planet's flow of energy and cooperation.
I love that. When did he pass away? What year?
83.
And so 83. So what is that? Almost 40 years ago. What do you feel he'd be saying about the world today?
Same thing, except he always, at the end of his life, he talked about integrity. He didn't have the social networking we have now. He couldn't get the information out there quick enough. So integrity is key because he trusted that we would be learning an exponential amount, which we are. The information's all around us. It's just which information do you choose to look at, and then sharing that information for the betterment of the future.
I love it. So what do you love most about that man? Obviously, you have just the true adoration and love for him and what he's meant to your life, and you serve on the board of his institute. In one nutshell, how has he inspired you to be a better human being?
Open my mind to what's possible if we think about things in a different way.
I love it. So let's talk more about solutions and actions. One of my main intentions with this podcast is not to focus on all the problems. Like, okay, we get it. There's a lot going on that is not serving the planet, that's not serving us as human beings, and we really want to focus on actionable solutions. And you started talking about action a little while ago, and then I diverted us, but let's come back. So for people watching, what can we do as individuals to make a difference? I want people to feel empowered, like you said. I want people to feel like they can make a difference, right? We believe in the power of one. Give us some just juicy tidbits that I want people to take away from this conversation and not just be like, oh, wow, George is an interesting man that's lived an amazing life. But I'm empowered. I can go do this. What can we do?
So I think the most important thing we can do is empower each individual to be the healthiest, most creative, open-minded, kind of cosmic voyager that they can be. That's really what we're here for.
And how? Oh, go ahead.
And so, let's work with nature. Let's use the systems of nature. You go out in the ocean, I go out in the ocean, right? Mm-hmm. When I paddle out, I never has it ever entered my mind that I'm going to change the ocean when I go surfing. Never. When I go riding on the track, never do I think I'm going to change the track. The track is a given. My bike is a given. I can adjust my bike a little bit. I can change my surfboard, but those things are set in stone, so to speak. And so, we need to learn how to get creative. It's a new relationship with life, not only with ourselves personally, but with each other and with the environment that sustains and allows us all to enjoy this incredible experience, this gift.
So it's a recalibration of our relationship with the ocean, with nature, and our own personal health?
Well, recalibration is a little bit, from my perspective, recalibration means that there was a conscious calibration in the first place.
A calibration.
Yeah. So I think that the key thing is that people just, they don't think about this stuff. When my mom came to the United States, she was trained as a doctor. And so late 40s, early 50s, she was working in a hospital. And she saw them routinely giving antibiotics to patients post-surgery. And she asked the doctors, why are you doing that? There's no sign of infection. There's no redness. There's no temperature. There's no, swelling. And they say, oh, we're doing this routinely now. We're giving antibiotics. And she said, you are going to create antibiotic resistant strains of bacteria if you continue to do this. They didn't care. So we're doing the same thing with, we're leaving it to someone else. Like, think about it like this, Rich. So you grow up and you learn and you work and you do different things. Does anyone ever sit you down and say, hey, you've reached this point in your life, you've gathered this information, and now you're at a perfect time to contribute to the future of this planet? When does that happen?
It really doesn't. I'm thinking because I had that happen, but it was me making that conscious decision a few years ago, just saying, okay, I'm in a good place in life. I'm like, my basic needs are met, more than met. And then I just, in the midst of that, cultivated this just deep love for the ocean, specifically the sacred life that lives in it. And I just felt called that I need to spend the rest of my life doing something to try to protect the ocean and the dolphins and the whales and the animals that I love so much. Can I truly make a difference? I don't know, but I felt like I had to do it. And that's probably unique, right? Which,
Yeah, I hope it's not unique. I hope more and more people wake up to their role in this system. But I think part of it is that we don't really realize how poorly our leadership has failed us. You get on a plane, you trust the pilot and the company to maintain everything. You trust, your life. You're walking on the plane,
that's right.
and they have certain protocols that they go through and checklists and stuff. I had a wake-up call because I work with the city of San Francisco on earthquake preparedness. And, you think we're prepared for earthquakes? Not prepared. There's incredible people that are caring and contributing to our preparation in all kinds of issues, but the governments aren't listening and implementing them because they're looking at short timelines, and resiliency is a long timeline, and they're looking at making money off of problems by solving problems. And the way we need to shift is by making money with solutions. And, we can't be in this situation where we're constantly fixing things. If you go after that fixing mentality, you're always going to be in a problem because people are making money off of the problems. We have to align objectives and incentives.
So is it fair to make a profit off of solutions? Obviously, corporations have made billions of dollars destroying the planet. Is it fair if entrepreneurs are making millions solving these problems?
Well, to me, judging what is fair and what isn't fair, it's
Right.
like nature comes to work every morning. The sun comes up. Does it ever ask you for anything? The soil's all working there for you. The plants are growing there for you. The water's there. The air is there. It doesn't ask you for anything. Bucky had a great line. He said, if humans realized that it cost nature $1 million a gallon to make gasoline, we'd quickly realize it's worth it to pay people $1,000 a day to stay home. We need to give people a safety net because look what it's costing us. When we confine people and they're living in wet markets, there's cross species jumping, and it ends up coming back to us. Look what it cost us to keep people in poverty and keep them in a lifestyle where they're going to be subject to that and then end up sharing it with the rest of the world. What did that just cost us?
A lot.
Yeah. So it would have been much cheaper. Solutions are always cheaper. Doing things right the first time is always cheaper than fixing and trying to band-aid it and correct it later. When we were doing earthquake work, you know, I met with the people at the Red Cross, and I said, why don't we use some of your budget to prepare? And they kind of looked back and they said, no, we don't do that. We're there after the disaster. I go, after the disaster is way harder. It's much easier to retrofit a building prior to a disaster when it's still all together. But you know, it's a different mindset.
Yeah, for many years, I studied under a pretty renowned doctor of preventive medicine down in Del Mar in San Diego, California. And he was trained as a surgeon, medical doctor, and kind of the same thing. One day he just was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm treating these people, I'm giving them surgery after they already have a problem. And just like that, he switched and became the first doctor of preventive medicine in all of Southern California. For like 40 years, he's been preaching vegan diets and exercise and meditation, like doing all these things to stay healthy so that you don't get sick. It kind of speaks to what you were saying a while back about the power of our immune system. So I am with you 100% on that.
Yeah, it's you know, in ancient Asia, the emperor paid his caregivers when he was well. If he got sick, he stopped paying. That's how we have to think about things. You know, like I said before, align objectives and incentives.
I like that. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about surfing. So I'm a paddleboarder. In my experience, surfers don't necessarily like paddleboarders. That's a whole different conversation. But I get out of their way. I go right out there and I'm looking for dolphins and whales. I'm not getting in their way. Tell me about your passion for surfing, creating surfboards, essential surfing. You created a surfboard for Mikhail Gorbachev. You've done some amazing things in the surfing world. Let's hear about that.
Well, the first time I rode a wave and, you know, just felt the energy from riding in on the whitewater before I stood up or anything, I was just amazed by the power. And so then when I started surfing and riding waves with the Schelling family, that I traded the motorcycling experience for my surf lessons, then I just loved it. And I loved the simplicity of it. I'm going, wow, this is so cool here. Instead of being in a garage with gas and oil and all these parts, and you know, you got this board that's really simple, and you go out
in the water.
Yeah, you're in the water, and so it was great. And so I just enjoyed it. And I grew up surfing San Francisco, which is
Cold.
it's a beach break and, you know, cool water. And so it's kind of illegal to surf here. When I first started, it was, you know, you could get a ticket. They didn't enforce it, but there were only like 8, 10, 12 people that you'd ever see at the beach, you know, on a particular day. We all knew each other. We all had the surf racks. There was only, you know, one surf shop in town. Bob Wise, a mentor for me and a dear friend. He just closed his shop after 51 years.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah.
Hold on, why was it illegal, first of all?
Because it was so dangerous. We had no lifeguards. So the police didn't want to try and go in the cold water. They knew they'd die. So they just, you know, made it, they threw up every barrier they possibly could. We had big caution signs. We still do. You know, at the beach, when you go down to the beach, there's, you know, dangerous undertow, do not enter water. You know, people have died, you know, from,
Got it.
you know, so they just put the fear in and try to keep us away. But then, you know, there's a saying that the biggest day I ever surfed was a small day in San Francisco. So it's open to swell, and it's also part of the Red Triangle. So we've got Monterey Bay, Point Reyes, and San Francisco here, and the Farallones. So it's just a place to be alone and be with nature. And I really like being alone in nature. To me, it's a whole different thing. And, I love going with my family, but when, there's times when I just need to go and walk for hours or swim or paddle or just go off and be by myself.
I always say, and it sounds like a contradiction. I always say that I feel most grounded when I'm on the water.
Yeah. No, I know. I was thinking about that this morning when I was out in the water, how, you know, I've never felt I wasted any time when I've been in the water.
I like that.
You know, maybe you have the same sense, but
I do and I don't. So I'm like, so I go out there every single day, and I'm gonna guess that. So I probably paddled 3,000 times from the same beach, all right here in North Laguna Beach, in the last 10 years. Pretty much every day. Some days twice a day, so maybe more than 3,000 times. And I'm gonna estimate about 50% of the time, half ish, I will have encounters with dolphins and or whales. And on the days that I don't see them, I gotta admit, I'm a little angry. I still love being out there and it's beautiful, but man, if I don't see the dolphins, I'm kind of like, oh, I feel like I missed out on something. So,
well, they influence you,
oh my God.
right? I went for years, and all of a sudden I'm paddling in the water once, and dolphins came by in San Francisco, and it was like a pod came up our way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was paddling next to them. They were pretty close. They were about maybe 5 feet away. And I could smell their breath as they were breathing. And they kind of like came up and looked at me. And, I had a seal, a baby seal, sea lion, climb up onto me once. And I was in the water, and this baby seal was just like really struggling. So I was looking around for the mom, going, wow, what's going on here? And pretty soon the baby seal came over and climbed up on my leg while I was holding it. It was right when we had our kids. We have twin boys, Craig and Wade, that surf too. They're 33 now. And so I was used to taking care of the babies at home. And so this baby came right up, and I'm holding it. It was so sweet. And so after a while, no mom, and we waited and waited and waited, and we ended up taking her. It was a little girl pup to the Marine Mammal Center.
Mm-hmm.
I was surfing right near the zoo, and first we ran over to ask, and they said we can't deal with her here. You have to take her to the Marine Mammal Center. So then we drove her over there.
You know what happened to her?
Yeah, she was apparently, rehabilitated and ultimately released.
Nice.
Yeah, and the mother was, they figure, a shark attack, because she still had some of her umbilical cord.
Oh wow.
She was that young. She was tiny. She was just like, maybe under 2 feet long.
She was small.
Yeah.
Here's a tough question. Fortunately, one that probably you won't have to worry about, but it's a fun question. If you had to choose, you could either only ride your motorcycle or surf. You had to pick one to do the rest of your life. Which would it be, and why?
Surf. And why is because it's just, it's more nature. It's, bikes are great, but you need a track, you need tires, you need parts, you need good conditions. You're not going to do it when it's raining. You're not going to do it when the asphalt's cold, because the traction is not as good. It's an incredible high. It's more reliable than surfing. Like you can go to the track, and you will get the equivalent of the best surf you've ever ridden in your life for hours on end when you get your skill levels up. So it's really fun. But if I had to choose, and it's one or the other, and it's for the rest of my life, surfing.
I had a feeling you would say that. Let's go back to solutions. So we talked about the power of one. And at the very beginning of this conversation, you talked about collaboration. I'm all about collaboration in my main business. It's a business based on collaboration with our nonprofit Project O. We pulled together successfully a lot of the top ocean protection organizations. My observation of the nonprofit world years ago was you had all these amazing people, all these amazing organizations trying to do good work, but they were kind of doing it autonomously. And it was always like, let's bring everybody together. Like, we need to be working together to solve these problems, especially organizations that are doing similar work around the world. Can you kind of bridge the gap, if you will, between the power of one, how a person can make a difference on their own, and how that can lead to global collaboration to solve some of these challenges?
Great question. It's individual empowerment. That's key. And I've thought about every other way to do it, but they're all vulnerable unless individuals are empowered. You can have a great idea and you get the system going, and then that system gets then hijacked. Just like what's happening with social networking, right? Social networking is a weapon now. You know, you look at the. Did you see the movie Hacked?
No.
On Netflix, about how Cambridge Analytica was influencing the election, and then this guy Brad Pascal, who was featured in an article in the New Yorker, he's the one that's built the media machine for Donald Trump, and he can polarize as few as 3 people with the technology he's developed, and they haven't shut it down since they won the election. They've only been improving it,
cranking it up.
Yeah. So we have to look at, why do we consider ourselves different from each other, and why aren't we collectively focused on those issues that affect our future? We did it for COVID, right? We put on masks, we stopped traveling, we stopped meeting in groups, we respected social distancing and so forth. So we can do it. It's just what we choose to do it for, and understanding the consequences if we don't.
Does this kind of tie into your whole concept of the ocean flag?
Yeah, the ocean flag is to bring together the organizations around the world that are doing great work for the ocean, but also giving a voice to the individual ocean lover, so that they can contribute in their own way and feel like they can join a voice, so that all they have to do is care about the ocean. They don't have to say how, they don't have to say whether it means to them that it just lightens their life when they look at it, you know, if it activates their blue mind, or the fact that they love the fresh air, they love, you know, looking into a tide pool and seeing the life, or they, you know, walk over kelp and like the sound it makes when they crunch it underfoot, you know, or they love finding a shell, or they love watching a child, you know, experience the ocean and see it for the first time, and watch a wave wash over their feet. In fact, there's a great line, Chris Lundy mentioned to me. He's an artist on the North Shore of Oahu, and we worked together on the Quicksilver in Memory of Eddie Aikau event. And he said his nephew was at the beach, and the waves came over his feet and got close to his ankles. And when the wave receded, he looked down, and his ankles were coming out of the sand. His feet were gone. And he tells his mom, "Look, Mom, the world is my shoes." And I love that, you know, that's a kid, right? Yeah. That's the way a kid thinks. I mean, You just gotta love that.
I
That's the mind. That's where the mind can go.
I'm with you, man. So number one, I'm down on the beach every day, and just that experience, I see little kids every day. It's like going to Disney World with a little kid. It's way different than if you go with an adult, because you see it through their eyes. So to see that innocence through a child, and I feel the same way, man. Like when I'm out there with the dolphins, like I probably sound like a crazy person when I'm like shooting my videos and you hear me, because it's like I've never seen them before, even though I've been with them a couple thousand times. Every time it feels brand new, and it's just amazing. So I kind of hear a thread in everything you're saying, George. I keep saying, what can we do? What can we do? And what I'm hearing back from you is it's about love. It's like, it's Jacques Cousteau's line, we protect what we love. So that's the theme I'm hearing over and over from you. If we truly get to the point where we love the ocean so much, we love the life in it so much, we love the planet so much, we love ourselves so much, we're going to just kind of automatically start to make better decisions. Is that oversimplified to say?
No, I think that's right. And Bucky had a great line. Said, "Love has no shadows."
Mm.
So when you think about love, and people throw that out there, say, "Oh, I love you, love that, love this," but when you take it to love has no shadows, then you're going deep, and it's a different level. And then at the end of his life, Bucky spoke a lot about integrity and the relationship between integrity and your actions, and how you care for yourself and the community that you're co-creating. And there's a great example of integrity. And I was at the California Academy of Sciences, and one of the fellows that works with the SETI project, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, was lecturing on interspecies communications. And he had been studying whales, and they kind of figured out what the whales said to each other as greetings when they talked with each other, and communicated about their names. And they even figured out what they said when they found food, because they hunt in a choreographed way. Some of the whales will blow bubbles so that the fish fall without the buoyancy. Others will circle them and kind of herd them into tighter groups so that they can run through the groups and feed more efficiently. There's a lot of body to move around, right? So they've gotten smart on how to get as many calories as they can. And so they figure out this call for food, and they send it out. And apparently one whale was in earshot and heard the transmission and came back to the source of the sound. And when it got there, there was no other whales, and there were no fish to feed. And it started exhibiting all the behaviors they had learned were associated with anger and frustration. And then they went on to discuss another aspect of their research. And I kind of got hung on that, because to me, what that indicated was that nature operates in integrity. This whale came, and either it's going to die because it misread a signal, or it had been lied to and it doesn't understand lying. So that's what in nature operates in integrity. That's an operating principle of nature. And so we, in interacting with nature, need to operate in integrity as well.
Well said. So I love that you keep bringing up Bucky. Can I call him Bucky, or is that
Yeah.
to be in the family to call him Bucky? So tell us your work with the Institute. Like, it feels to me like a big part of your soul is to carry his work forward, to continue moving it forward into the world, especially now more than ever when we are in a world that is a little bit integrity challenged. and obviously in dealing with some serious issues. So what's the Institute focused on?
Well, the Institute is focused obviously on carrying his knowledge forward, but also about regenerative solutions and systems thinking. And so we get to work with a bunch of great people on the planet that are engaged. So it's Amanda Joy Ravenhill, Faith Flanagan, Tom Chi, who worked with Google Glass and does rapid prototyping, and Barbara Mers just joined the board with us. So and we've got this incredible network, and we're not the only ones. But Bucky had friends. We've done work with Arup, the engineering firm that built the Sydney Opera House. Ovi Arup was a dear friend of Bucky's. Bucky left the estate, his daughter Allegra and Jamie and Alexandra, they left Bucky's archive to Stanford University. So 1,400 lineal feet of archive of boxes.
Wow.
Of his artifacts. And he kept everything, he studied everything, he looked at trends. He was exposed to big data because he worked with the Navy. So there's a lot of different factors that shaped his thoughts. There's a wonderful article by Calvin Tompkins in the New Yorker called Intellectual Outlaw, 1966 New Yorker. And Calvin Tompkins, who's 94 now, wrote it. And it's a great way to have an introduction about Bucky and his work. It's taken in 1966 on Bear Island, which is a very important place in the life of Buckminster Fuller and his family. And Calvin Tompkins went there and spent 4 days with him, and kind of got an update from him on what was going on with his travels around the world and who he was working with. He was at the peak of social networking at the time. He was in magazines, books, movies, meeting with top people. Same as Jacques Cousteau. We had a lot of opportunities to listen to incredible people that were telling us how we could make changes for the better. And I'm studying, why don't we make those better decisions? What's standing in our way from making those better decisions?
And I feel like you really hit on a lot of that in this conversation, which I appreciate. So as we begin to wind down, first of all, it's been amazing to get to know you and spend this time with you. We definitely are kindred souls, because I've always felt like if I could, in my small way, just show people what I get to see every day, that people, of course, are going to love these dolphins and whales so much that we will begin to make changes and do what we can to protect them. And I think you obviously feel the same way. So a couple things as we wind down. If somebody wanted to find out more about you, George, and a little bit more about what you're up to in the world, where's the best place to do that?
Probably through the Buckminster Fuller Institute or through the Walter Monk Foundation. I work closely with Mary Monk. You're down there near the MAPS project, which was just installed at La Jolla Shores. So that was, Walter had done the mapping of the bathymetry of the offshore canyons right there by Scripps Pier. And then the MAPS project is a 2,000 square foot lithomosaic that shows the different sea life that's out there underwater, so that people walking out and looking at the beach can look over this incredible mosaic installation that educates them and enlightens them as to what's out there below the water.
I love it. George, I'll give you the last word. What do you want to share with everybody watching in terms of what we can do in our own lives to make a difference to protect this ocean and this planet that we all love so much?
Imagine what this planet can be, and then find others to work with to make that happen. And, this is not the time to think small. Our biggest risk is to think small right now. We need to shift the planet. This is what we've been waiting for. Mm-hmm. We've got the information. We've got the need. It's obvious that the planet's suffering. We've got the ability to connect our knowledge and share solutions immediately. And we're understanding now how systems work, natural systems work. So we've got the incredible work of Brian von Herzen and the Marine Permaculture Project. We've got alcohol, which we can extract from plants on the surface instead of digging down and getting oil. We can do that with David Bloom and Tom Harvey at Bloom Distillation. So those, we've got the work of Janine Bennis in biomimicry. We've got Jay Harmon and, Pax Scientific with his understanding of vortices in both water movement and air. We've got Gina Bria with the Hydration Foundation. We've got all kinds of solutions. Wallace J. Nichols, Blue Mind. I mean, they're right there. That's what it's about. Get into your blue mind.
Yeah.
And don't think small.
Think big, act big, love big. George, it's been a true honor to spend this time with you. I can't wait till we can meet in person, hopefully very soon. You're an amazing man, amazing soul, and your heart shines through in all your words. And it's been an honor for me to talk with you today. Thank you so much.
We co-created every moment of this, and I thank you and appreciate you for giving me the chance to connect and share what has been shared with me with your audience.
Thank you, George.
Aloha, brother.
Peace, brother.